when you have the merger possibility with no entry commitment, that means at the third stage of the game, the foreign firm can still decide whether to enter or not. So with that option, even after acceptance, with that option available to foreign firm, we have a set of constraints to be satisfied. These first two constraints are participation constraint. That means these are the reservation payoff of the host firm. A small clarification. So this is a wrong statement that I have begun with. So this no entry commitment means that if the offer is accepted, you don't have the option of entry because you are under the contractual kind of condition not to enter after the acceptance. However, in case of rejection, you can enter. So if you want to draw a game, the game will look like an offer is coming, okay, and then accept or reject. And when the acceptance happens, there is no further actions available to the foreign firm. However, in case of rejection, the foreign firm can decide whether to enter or not. So this is how the game is truncated for this section of the paper. Who can simply reject any offer and then get these payoffs depending on the private information. And then whatever offer that is made, it has to be incentive compatible so that different types accept different contracts. Now, there is no a priori reason that the contracts will be different. There will be, they can be the same contract, which means that it can be pooling contract, or which would mean that SX equal to SOI and PX equal to POI, and that's how the things can pan out. But we look into the two different contract and their payoffs at the subsequent stages. Okay, so now
Sir, is there anything playing right now? The audio is not like it's not audible.
now first consider. Sorry, the audio is not playing.
For the last like half a minute or so, it was not.
But it began with the audio, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So for half a minute, so let me just repeat that. Depending on the private information, and then whatever offer that is made, it has to be. Can you hear now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Incentive compatible so that different types accept different contracts. Now, there is no a priori reason that the contracts will be different. There will be, they can be the same contract, which means that it can be pooling contract, or which would mean that SX equal to SOI and PX equal to POI, and that's how the things can pan out. But we look into the two different contract and their payoffs at the subsequent stages. Okay, so now for the host firm, the strategy is very simple. The host firm knows that by acceptance it will get its reservation payoff. So depending on the private information, it will follow a strategy that accept any merger offer which gives a payoff which is weakly greater than lambda x for the high type and reject otherwise. Similarly, the low type will also have the similar kind of strategy that accept any merger offer which gives a payoff which is weakly greater than lambda y and reject otherwise. Okay, so these strategies will ensure that they never get anything lower than the reservation payoff. Okay, and anything if they get extra, that will be the additional thing depending on the way the asymmetric information problem will be solved. So now, before we proceed further, just imagine that you have a 0 to 1 straight line and you are measuring the share of host firm from point 0 and you are measuring the share of foreign firm from the point 1. So essentially any point on this 0, 1 state reflects a distribution of shares between the two parties. Okay, where the left hand side, the amount will reflect for the host firm, right hand side will reflect for the foreign firm. Okay, now you can easily imagine that from 0 to 1, you will have a lambda point, that's a 4 by 9, so that is below half. Similarly, you will also have HX and HY, which are the critical values, and the foreign firm has to buy out at least that much amount of shares in order to ensure that post acceptance, there are no interest in terms of further entry. So that would be more relevant for the next section of the lecture. But right now there is a commitment associated with the acceptance. So whatever that commitment is, so this share distribution will lie between 0 to 1, and they will try to accordingly extract surplus in a manner, the foreign firm will extract surplus in a manner that the host firms are pushed to the reservation payoff, and we will try to see whether such a contract is possible. Okay, so that's how we are proceeding. So imagine always just draw a 0, 1 line, put a lambda point and also HY and HX point, and then you try to follow the entire thing. It will be very clear to you. And remember that when we say that S is the amount of shares the foreign firm buys out. So S will be measured from 1 to this side, okay? And 1 minus S will be then from the left hand to that point, okay? So that's how we'll be doing. So if I say S equal to 1 minus lambda, so that you can easily imagine that there's a lambda point, and this stretch will be then 1 minus lambda, and the left of lambda point will be lambda. So 1 minus lambda shares being bought by the foreign firm means that lambda shares is left with the host firm. Okay. So with this understanding, the rest of the things will be clear, but you feel free to stop me whenever you like so that I can clarify. Okay. Now, first consider a very simple pooling contract for simplicity. So that is foreign firm exactly buys out 1 minus lambda amount of shares at price P equal to 0 using the thread that I will enter if you do not accept my offer. Now, if this particular offer is accepted by both types, then each of them will be holding lambda shares, the high type as well as low type. So given that they know the kind of outcome that will follow given the private information, so both of them will be assured of their reservation payoff lambda X and lambda Y depending on their types. Okay, so this is a very simple contract which satisfy both the constraints, and with this pooling contract, the foreign firm receives Q is the prior probability that the market demand would be high, and as a result, given that X will be generated with that probability and minus lambda X will be appropriated by the host firm. So Q into X minus lambda X will be the payoff plus 1 minus Q is the probability that it is low type. So Y minus lambda Y will be the net payoff to the foreign firm. So this will be the expected payoff subject to the condition that this particular offer is accepted, and that as a result foreign firm gets this. And this is a simple pooling contract. Both of them are given the same contract. Okay. Now there can be, just a moment. Oh, sorry. This particular problem is with no entry commitment. That means after acceptance, there will be no entry. Sorry about that. So I misinterpreted this in a hurry. So that means there is an assurance that if you accept the contract, I am not going to enter. And if you don't accept the contract, I will enter. Okay. So under this situation, this pooling contract will give him the payoff, which is the maximum payoff attainable in the relationship, leaving aside the two reservation payoffs. Okay. Now, this is not the only contract that is feasible. There can be separating contract. Now, separating contract means that you give different contracts to different types of host farm. So one possible way is that you give a contract 1 minus Sx, okay, which is alpha x. So that means that you allow the host firm to retain alpha x amount of shares, which is belonging to lambda and 1. So it is to the right of the 0 line segment. It is to the right of lambda. And similarly, for the low type, you give a contract such that which is to the left of the lambda. Now, what is the implication of that? Now, to the left of lambda, if you give a contract, that contract will involve that host firm will be holding lower shares than its reservation payoff because it is below lambda. So host firm has to be given some payment, P, okay, POI. So that would be positive. Now that POI will be in line with that Y will be the outcome, okay? So the additional payoff that the additional, the shares that the host firm is holding, that is alpha Y. So that from lambda to alpha Y, that additional shareholding has to be bought by the foreign firm, and that has to be paid in the low types price. On the other hand, to the right of lambda point, you have Px, which is lambda minus alpha x, okay? So that additional amount of shares is not additional in a sense that alpha x minus lambda is the additional share, okay? So, sorry, lambda minus, no. Alpha x is to the right of lambda, okay? So, you are allowing the host firm to actually hold a share which is greater than its reservation payoff because alpha x is greater than lambda. So that means at the end of the profit realization, the host firm will be getting alpha x into x, which will be greater than lambda x. So that additional amount of payment that the host firm will be able to get at the end of the period, that has to be paid to the foreign firm. So this particular PX will be negative. So in other words, I am allowing you to hold more shares in the company than your reservation payoff. And in that case, I am asking you to pay as per the high state of demand outcome. Okay. On the other hand, for the low type, I am buying more as foreign firm, and I'm buying more at the low types price. Now, you can easily imagine that when I'm paying the low types, that particular at the low types price, the X type will never have incentive to accept that offer. On the other hand, I'm allowing you to enjoy more shares, but I'm asking you to pay higher price for that. So the low type will never find it profitable to accept the contract that is offered to the high type. So this particular contract will then SX, PX and SYPY will be then will allow you to separate out the two different types, and that separating contract will again yield the same payoff as given by 3. Okay, so that is the idea. So here everything is being possible.
So can you once explain again how it is separated?
Yeah, so just imagine 0 to 1, okay? And I don't have the device to draw it, but just imagine that 0 to 1, okay? And now you have a lambda point. Now, this multinational is saying that, okay, I will hold 90%, okay? Now, when the guy is making the offer that SY, the purchase of share will be 90%, then host firm will be getting only 10%. Okay. Now host firm is getting 10%. So given that this is earmarked for the low type, so 10% of the Y will be host firm's payoff. So obviously, why should it be happy with that? So it will be happy with that provided that you compensate well, compensate in the low types price from lambda to that point, that 10% point. Okay. So lambda minus 10%. okay, lambda minus 0.1 if you want to say, okay, that has to be bought in the low type's price, and in that case, low type will get its reservation payoff. On the other hand, for the high type, you are doing the opposite. Imagine that, okay, you are telling me that the market is very good, fantastic. So why don't you then hold the 90% of the share? So now for the high type, multinational is saying, okay, I will hold 10%, you hold 90%. But given that you are holding 90%, you pay me beyond your reservation payoff that was earmarked as lambda, this additional amount, that the 0.9 minus lambda at the high type price. So you are claiming that your market is good. So I am not telling anything. And given that market is good, so you should be able to pay me according to that 0.9 minus y at x price. Okay. So that's where this lambda minus this particular thing, okay, will be negative. So basically 0.9 minus lambda, that amount into x will be paid to the multinational. Okay. So in other words, I am telling you that, okay, you are telling me market is bad. That's fine. So I am buying you more. Okay. I'm going to give you the low types price. And you should be happy with that because you are claiming that you are a low type, in a sense that market demand is low. On the other hand, I am telling the opposite to the other guy, that you are telling me that market demand is high. So then the share price tomorrow will be very high. Okay. Or the returns from your shareholding will be high. So then you just pay me the price. Okay. So that will separate out the both. And now imagine that they can mimic each other. Now, if the high type, they go to this 10% point and accept what is earmarked for the low type, then high type is losing. Why? Because for this side, any movement from lambda to this side is being paid for in terms of the low value of the share. On the other hand, this side, the host firm has to pay to the multinational at the high demand share value. Okay. So the low type would not be interested on any contract to the right of lambda. On the other hand, high type would not be interested in any contract which is to the left of lambda. So this helps us to have a separation of the contract between the two types of host firm. Okay. So now you just juxtapose it in the proper framework, that host firm has private information, multinational has no private information. It is trying to extract some information by the revelation of the host firm themselves, and how that revelation is being triggered. So I am telling you that I am going to hold 90%. You tell me how much price I have to pay. Now, obviously, has it been that high demand conditions guy you are interacting with, that guy will say, ki, okay, you have to pay me high price. Okay. But if I say that, okay, I will hold 90%, but I will pay low types price, then only low type will be attracted to that contract. On the other hand, I will say, okay, I'm not going to hold much of the share. You pay me for the additional share, and you pay me according to the high type price. Then low type will not come to this point. So it will typically choose any point to the left, and the high type will choose any point to the right. That's how the entire separation will work out. Okay. Clear? Because you are making host firm to pay in case host firm is willing to hold more shares, and that is possible when the market demand is high. Okay. On the other hand, you are paying to the host firm a small amount, and that will be only attractive for the low demand guy to accept.
So I understand why the low type won't want any contract to the right of lambda, but like why, like isn't it beneficial for the high type firm to pay the low type, like to get compensated basically? So won't
you see, the offer is coming from foreign firm to the host firm, and host firm is divided into two types, high or low. Okay. And as we have said that in this kind of asymmetric information, you are basically the same guy is being split into different entities. Okay. The host firm, if it knows the information good, then it is a good type. That means high demand. If it knows that the information is bad, then it's a bad type, low demand. Okay. Now the issue is you are saying that you can understand that if anything to the left of lambda, low type is accepting and getting its reservation payoff. But you are also saying that why high type is not mimicking that. Is that the question?
Yes.
But then in that case, you see, the price that is on offer to the left is of the low type share price. So high type, if it accepts, it is going to get low type price. And that it is not interested because it knows that if I give you 1% of the shares, I know the market demand is high. So I would be only happy when you are paying me 0.1x, not 0.01x, 1% of the share. Okay. So then only I will be able to make my card, because why should I unnecessarily kind of give up my wealth? Because my wealth is based on my information. And in that case, whatever share I am holding, I know that at the end of the period, the amount of value that will be generated is X. So if I hold 0.01 shares I'm giving you, then I will be expecting high price. So to the left of lambda, any amount of shares values more for the high type, but values less for the low type. So the multinational being clever, it is offering to the left of lambda with only the low type share price. So the high type will never find them attractive to accept. On the other hand, it is saying, okay, to the right of lambda, you are welcome to hold large amount of shares, but then you pay me higher price. Now that higher price will not be attractive for the low type to go there, to the right of lambda.
Yes.
Because higher price means you are paying higher than what your true value of the share will be at the end of the day, and you have the information. Okay. Okay. Possible without much problem is because that I am able to write contract contingent on that I would not enter tomorrow, and that is the binding commitment I'm giving to you, and that is the kind of that is contracted upon, so you do not have any problem of incomplete contract with respect to this future commitment. And because of that reasons, the MNC is able to get what it is expecting to get, that is the maximum payoff. So,
sir,
yes.
May you repeat the last that why the low type don't go for high type contract?
Because high type.
Sir, I have a doubt on the pooling contract. So since you said that this is a merger with no entry commitment,
only when you accept the contract. If you don't accept the contract, I will enter.
Okay, right. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So this is it is contingent on the acceptance.
All
Otherwise,
right, yeah. Okay.
you enter, right? Okay. So now we are at the proposition 2, which says that with no entry commitment, when the merger offer consists of a price and share distribution, merger always takes place even though the host firm has private information regarding demand. Okay. So remember that we are already working with two types. Okay. So that is the advantageous, because we are able to find two different contract space. One is to the left of lambda, another is to the right of lambda. And we are able to kind of find good number of contracts related to that, so that the reservation payoff is obtained by the host firm, and two types. And the space is between this to the left and to the right of lambda. But in case there are many types, again, we will have problem of separation. So in this case, we are not having that problem of separation, because we have a contract space where we are able to space out with respect to two different sides of the lambda, that is with respect to two different points. Okay. So that is helpful to understand. But with continuum of type, the way we have presented this model will have to change. Okay. And that would be, of course, complicated. So we are not getting into that, but we are just simply thinking in terms of a two-type case. So this tells you that it is possible to merge efficiently, and MNC or the foreign firm gets the full appropriable surplus from the relationship, and the market will be served under monopoly after all this buyout, that is possible either through polling contract or through separating contract. So this tells you that there is the asymmetric information per se is not a hindrance for merger. Okay. Now, the common sense will tell you that if you don't know the asset's value, it's very difficult for you to buy, right? You know the market for lemon story. Okay. So the way it is particularly played here with two types, you can easily see that that is not creating any hindrance to merger, and merger is possible. So the intended strategies of the foreign firm is fully fulfilled. Okay. So in other words, typically in the context of adverse selection, you do see little trade that is happening, little transaction that is happening between parties because of the adverse selection. But here it is happening and there is no issue. There are plenty of restrictive assumptions we have made. That's why it is happening. So one restrictive assumption is this two type. It is easy to separate out, and I can still fully expropriate all the surplus that is available in the relationship. Okay. So now, merger without no entry commitment. Now, what does that mean? That means that even with acceptance, I am not making any commitment at the time of making the offer that tomorrow I will not enter. Okay, so that means at the start stage of game, I would not enter. That kind of commitment is not possible. Okay, now when I say commitment is not possible, that means that even if you are willing to make the commitment, it has no validity because tomorrow it is not a very credible promise, because you have the option of entry, government or the court of law will not prevent you to enter. And so as soon as you have some opportunity to enter, you will enter into the market. Okay, so that is well known. Everybody knows that opportunistic behavior will take place at the end of the day. So there is no point keeping this kind of words in face value and assume that you would not enter tomorrow. Okay. So in other words, whatever I write, whatever I say to you, it is not a commitment possible, because you cannot take me to court because of the commitment I have made. And that's the problem of no entry commitment not being possible. Okay. Clear? So this is the section we are heading towards. So that means that if no entry commitment is not possible, then if no entry commitment is not possible, then the foreign firm has to take into consideration that if I buy certain amount of shares, it must ensure that post entry my threat of entry is vanished, because if it does not vanish, I will have the temptation to enter. Post buyout, the threat of entry should vanish. And if I enter, then there will be duopoly competition, and the only source of profit in this particular relationship, which can be easily appropriated, is by avoiding competition. Okay, so if you are able to avoid competition by this buyout, then the market remains monopoly, and that is what the two guys are interested in. But obviously subject to the host firm's participation as well as incentive constant. So is the issue clear? So foreign firm knows that there is no way I can make the commitment. So only option available to me is to buy a certain amount of shares so that I do not have any viable threat after that. Because if the threat remains viable in the sub game, it would be optimal for me to enter. And if I enter, there will be duopoly competition. That will be perfectly foreseen by the host firm in the beginning. So as a result, final outcome will be duopoly. And if the final outcome is duopoly, then based on the duopoly outcome, the entire previous stages game will pan out in a sense that acceptance or rejection will be according to that terms and conditions that I know you will enter tomorrow. Now, if you enter tomorrow, in any case, I will get lambda x or lambda y. So until unless I get that payoff subsequent to your entry and even after acceptance, so there is no point for me to accept such contract. So in that case, it is the trivial case is that you do not give any buyout offer. So make an unacceptable offer and then enter. Okay. So that's the alternative that will yield the same overall surplus in the economy, and two guys are finally sharing these two things. So the overall surplus will be depleted, and as a result, there is loss. Okay. So the foreign firm's main objective is to avoid that competition and avoid that loss, but still make host firm coming on board with respect to whatever is possible so that the foreign firm's payoff is maximized. Okay. So
Sir,
now, yes.
so if the foreign firm knows that profits will be higher in a monopoly than in a duopoly, then won't it anyway not enter the market?
In the subgame, that's not a credible thing. I hold 10% of my shares in your company, right? And then from 10% shares, I am only getting 10% of X or Y. Okay, if I enter, what do I get? I will get 10% of lambda X plus lambda X. There are plenty of possibilities where these terms will be greater than 10X, 10% of X, right? Right?
Right.
So you need to buy a critical amount of shares in order to make your future entry a non-credible threat. So is it clear? If I hold 10%, I would be tempted to enter. If I hold 90%, I may not. So that means that foreign firm now is restricted to make offer only in a critical zone of 0 to 1 share distribution. Is it clear?
Yes,
Otherwise,
sir.
entry threat will remain credible, and if it is credible, then you know finally total surplus is 2 lambda X. Okay. So the entire distribution and whatever. And also there is this entry cost F. So it is not 2 lambda X only as the total surplus minus F. So the purpose here is to avoid competition, which reduces the surplus from X to 2 lambda X, and also to avoid the entry cost, which is fixed cost F. Improving. So foreign firm's utmost objective is to avoid the entry. Now, to do that, it will have to buy out substantive amount of shares. But what's the problem here? Problem is that if it buys out 90% or 95% of the shares, but it doesn't know the true value of those shares in the market. So it is apprehensive of whether to buy 90% and what price. Now, if it offers low price, then high type may not accept it, right? So that possibility creates a tension, and that's why we'll see that only within a specific critical range of share distribution, some optimal buyout offer will exist. Now, to go further, first observe that I have two different types. Q is the prior probability of X, and 1 minus Q is the prior probability of Y. Okay, so you can easily see that one possible way to avoid at least the entry for low type is to simply offer lambda Y. That will not be accepted by high type and buy out completely. Okay. So this is to tell you that the entry will never occur with probability 1. You have always the option of at least buying out the low types at the low types price, and which will be accepted by low type, and that's why the entry will never happen with probability 1, okay? Because Y has a probability of 1 minus Q, and we are assuming that it's a positive probability. Okay, that's how our asymmetric information is defined. Now, the foreign firm has following class of strategy, okay? So S1 is the class of strategy where make an offer such that both types accept and enter if rejection occurs. Okay. Now that would mean that it can give offers to both at some acceptable price. That's a feasible strategy, and there can be plenty of strategies in this class. So I'm calling it a class of strategies where the attempt is being made to buy out both types, and in case of rejection, entry will take place. So this is my S1 class of strategy. Second class of strategy is make an offer such that only low type accepts, but the high type rejects and enter if rejection occurs. And one such trivial example of the S2 class of strategy is buy out low type completely. Now that's not the only strategy. So that's why it is again a class of strategy. There can be plenty of other share distribution with only the objective of low type accepting it, and that's the second class of strategy. Third class of strategy is that make an offer such that high type accepts but the low type rejects, so the opposite of S2, and enter if rejection occurs. Okay. There is a fourth possibility. That fourth possibility is both of them reject, but I have told you that that can never be an equilibrium, but because this particular thing is an option available to the foreign firm which avoids entry, that means avoids the expenditure on the fixed cost, that is F, with some probability 1 minus Q, and also to avoid competition in case the market is truly low and the low type accepts the offer, so the market remains monopoly. So is it clear that both rejecting, you can certainly call it a feasible strategy, but that would never be in any optimal consideration, because I always have a dominant strategy over it, which can be easily thought of as the S2 one possible strategy. Okay. So one possible strategy is completely buyout, and as a result, the S4 type of strategy where both types reject can never be an equilibrium, so that's we are not considering. So now I have told you that I need to hold certain critical amount of shares to ensure that I do not have any future entry threat. Okay, and then if you just try to calculate this, so if you did I define my H in the complete information scenario case? Yeah. So here, so this is the condition. Now I am just rewriting this condition with respect to that. I now have J, which can take two values, X or Y. Okay. So I will have X or HY as the two critical values, and all my offer has to be restricted within that zone. Now that HX and HY ensures that if you make an offer below this HX or HY for the corresponding high type or low type case, so in that case, post acceptance, your entry threat vanishes. This is given by this condition, which I just shown you 2-3 pages back. Now, any separating contract which is acceptable to both types must leave the host firm with the share alpha J such that alpha J belongs to 08J. So which means that if I think of now that alpha X will be the host firm share distribution after buyout, and PX is the corresponding price for that. So my alpha X has to be lower than HX. Similarly, my alpha Y has to be lower than HY. Okay. And given that X is greater than Y from this critical thing, you can also easily see that HX is less than HY. Okay. If the host firm holds alpha share after buyout, alpha equal to 1 minus SJ, then the entry threat would vanish after pooling contract if the following condition hold. Now note that if I offer a pooling contract where I do not distinguish between the two types, so in other words, a single contract is being accepted by both types. Okay. Now, so note the way game is being solved. So whatever be the offer, SIPI or SJPJ that I was discussing, that a price and a share. Now the price has no meaning for the subsequent, because what matters in terms of after acceptance or at the time of acceptance, the share distribution matters, but post acceptance what matters is whether I'm entering or not. Now my entry or no entry depends on how much share I am left with, and whether by making another entry in terms of a subsidiary, I would be able to get more payoff. Okay. So that is the consideration I will have. And for that, I will try to avoid competition, because avoiding competition means I'm doing two things. One is saving on the competitive loss as well as saving on the fixed cost. That's a waste. Okay. So based on that, I will be able to find out the share distribution in a manner that post buyout I do not make an entry. Okay. So now if you look at this particular condition, say F5, it tells you that suppose there is a pooling contract which is accepted. Now, what do you mean by pooling contract being accepted? That there is a particular point of the share distribution between 0 and 1, where both the parties, both the types of the host firm will be accepting the contract. Now, when they are accepting, obviously their consideration is that they get their reservation payoff. Okay. So I'm imagining that there exists an alpha point, and based on that alpha point, there will be some pooling contract available. Now, corresponding to that alpha, your prices are to be determined to be paid to the host firm. So that we are not considering as of now. Now, what is the important for the foreign firm subsequently is that it knows that it only holds 1 minus alpha shares in the business, and it doesn't know which type of the party, the host firm, it has interacted with, because both have accepted that alpha offer based on whatever the corresponding P has been offered. So now its point of consideration is that after holding 1 minus alpha, should I enter? Now, if I enter, then you can see that 1 minus alpha lambda x will be from the existing business, that will be my payoff, plus lambda x minus f will be from the new entity that I set up a subsidiary, where this particular unit will be competing with the existing unit with the host firm being a partner in that. So the duopoly profit will be lambda x minus the f is the amount of fixed cost. So this will be my net payoff under entry in case, which I do not know, in case the market demand is high, that is the probability of that is Q, minus if I do not enter, then I stay with that host firm with 1 minus alpha share distribution. So I'll be getting 1 minus alpha x. So this first term Q into this defines the net gain from entry. Okay, net gain means that if you do not enter, you get 1 minus alpha x. If you enter, you get this 1 minus alpha lambda x plus lambda x minus a. Okay, so this is the net gain from entry in case the market is high in demand. So Q is the probability of that. Similarly, in case the market demand is low, the latter term 1 minus alpha lambda y plus lambda y minus f minus 1 minus alpha y is the net gain in case the market demand is low and I am making the entry. So these two net gain will be then expected net gain will be Q into the first term and the 1 minus Q in the second term. Now, if the expected net gain is less than equal to 0, then the foreign firm would not have any incentive to enter after buying out alpha amount of after buying out 1 minus alpha amount of shares. So the foreign firm will be holding 1 minus alpha and host firm will be holding alpha amount of share. Okay. So this particular expression 5 then defines the net gain from entry, and that net gain, expected net gain, must be less than equal to 0 in order to ensure that subsequent to the purchase of shares, there is no further entry. Okay. Any question here? In that case, those, yes.
Sir, I understand the pooling contract here. So the point above about the separating contract, which is written, can you explain that once? That any separating contract which is acceptable to both types. That one.
Where did I write that?
So the first point which is visible on the screen, right?
Oh, any separating contract which is acceptable to both types must leave the host firm with the share alpha j. Okay, this is good. So you remember that separating contract means, this is an interesting question. Separating contract means what? That as soon as you accept the contract, I know your type. How? Because that's how you are revealing your type. Okay. Now, if there exists a separating contract through which I am able to separate out two different types of the host firm, then as soon as, depending on which contract is being accepted, because now imagine that I am offering two contracts. I have already talked about that there are two contracts possible in different different zone of the share distribution. So now, as soon as I see that, okay, you have accepted the contract, which is something that only the low type will accept. So then after acceptance, I can easily infer from the acceptance that you are a low type. Okay. Now, if I know that you are a low type, then my condition of entry, condition of further entry, because as soon as you accept separating contract, I know your exact type. Okay. And as soon as that happens, my incentive to enter further would then be governed by that HX and HY we have just defined. Okay. And I have said that my share distribution should be such between this 0, 1, so that the host firm holds lowest share, and that is alpha J, and that should be to the left of HJ. Okay. So for high type, it has to be below HX. For low type, it has to be below HY. Okay. And we also know that HX is less than HY. So given that this particular game after the acceptance of separating contract will be played under complete information, because I am able to infer from the acceptance that you are a good type or a bad type. And then my subsequent game with you will be with respect to that type being revealed to me or through your acceptance, and I will play a complete information game. And that's why my entry decision will then depend on that whether the share distribution is such that I know your type, so that condition has to be met. Okay. On the other hand, if it is a pooling contract, then I do not know which type I'm interacting. So then I will be looking at the expected gain from further entry, and that is being laid out in condition 5. So this is how the two differences are. So in pooling contract, I would not know of post acceptance that what is the type of the host firm I'm dealing with, because both types, it is acceptable to both types. And I don't know which one has accepted. Okay, so I do not know anything. But in separating contract, from the acceptance, I would be able to infer that it must be the high type if some contract is accepted, or it is the low type if some other contract is accepted. So that acceptance, it is visible, observable to me as soon as the acceptance occurs. Okay, that which one has been picked by that host firm. Okay, and from that I am inferring, and my inference is correct because that's how the design of the contract is. That if you are a good student, you are behaving in a certain manner, and that is well known. If you are a bad student, you behave in a different manner. So if I know that, and that's well known, so then from your behavior, I make an offer and you accept one of the two, and then I know your type, and then obviously my expectations and everything will change according to that full information that I have gathered through that particular contract. So is it clear?
Yes.
Okay. Contracts will be feasible because I will not know even after acceptance of the contract that whether the market is high or low. Okay. Now, in such a case, my entry threat post acceptance will depend on that what is my expected payoff from entering, because I still do not know even after the acceptance of the offer under pooling, because both types are accepting. So even after pooling, so both types are accepting. So I would enter, but in that case with Q probability, there will be X output with 1 minus. This is being repeated. I'm just proceeding a little further. Entry will be that more than I would gain. Then after that, alpha only at a point left of HY. So I will have a transition from positive to 0 at some intermediate point alpha star, which will lie between HX and HY. Okay. So, okay. And what is at HX? That at HX, that only at a will be 0 on their own. Wait, I'm just adjusting this a little bit. There would be no entry entry feasibility, in a sense that it would not be profitable to enter. Okay, so in pooling contract, I have to choose those alphas for which this particular condition holds. So this condition 5 is very critical. Okay, now you can easily check, given the definition of Hx and Hy, that this alpha will be, in terms of, if you put this equal to 0, then it will be, this alpha will be some alpha star which is between Hx and Hy. Okay, because at Hx this particular terms will be 0. At Hy this particular term will be 0 on their own. Okay, so is it clear that this inside term under Hx, the first term will be 0, and under Hy, the second term will be 0, because that's how the Hx and Hy are defined. If you go back to the definition, that individually when we know that x and y, then obviously that is giving us Hx or Hy as the critical value of alpha, so that the current form is indifferent between entry and no entry, and that means that both sides are giving him 0. So under Hx first term is 0, under Hy second term is 0. Okay, now we'll try to find out that what will happen when the expected value of this will be 0, because at Hx what is happening, the second term at Hx will be something else. Okay, it is not 0. Similarly, at Hy, the first term will be something else, and we'll be basically evaluating these two, and to find out that there will exist some alpha star at which the expected term will be 0. So let us just proceed. Okay, because that's how the two definitions are. But the expected term will be equal to 0 only at a point which will be in between Hx and Hy. Just convince yourself, and if you are not convinced, you can calculate and see that the critical alpha star for which this is equal to 0 will belong between Hx and Hy. Okay, for the simple reason that at Hx this particular term will be 0, but at Hx what would be this term? At Hx, that is to the left of Hy. Okay, and what is Hy? Hy is the point at which it is equal to 0. What is to the right of Hy? Where it is greater than 0. What is to the left of Hy? It is negative. So at Hx, this is negative, this is 0. So the entire thing is strictly negative. On the other hand, at Hy, this is 0, but this is positive. So I will have a transition from positive to 0 at some intermediate point, alpha star, which will lie between Hx and Hy. Okay, clear? Otherwise, I will repeat. Tell me. This is very critical. Tell me if you have a question. So you have 0 to 1, you have Hx point, Hy point, and given this algebra which is already laid out, which is the expected gain from entry under pooling contract. So you will be able to evaluate this expression both at Hx as well as at Hy. And given that there is a smooth transition with respect to the value of alpha at different values of on the line. So at Hx, you are able to see that this is actually negative. The expected value is negative. At Hy, which is to the right, you are getting that this expected value is positive. So there will be some transition in between these Hx and Hy, where at that value of alpha, you will be able to get that the overall term is 0. Okay, so that's the idea being explored. So we will have some alpha star at which there will be this particular entry thread post buyout will vanish. So I've explained a lot, and that you can easily convince yourself when you read this. So now I have the following 3 possible cases to consider. Okay, now Hx, Hy, that relationship is well known, but what is not known, whether lambda falls to the left of it, to the right of it, or in between the two. Okay, so I have to consider all three possibilities. Okay. Now, depending on a particular demand or cost function, you might have something happening. Okay. So Hx and Hy and lambda can have some relationship. So in order to characterize the equilibrium, we need to follow the all three possibilities. Okay. So basically, depending on demand and cost function, you can think of that you will be able to evaluate Hx, you will be able to evaluate Hy given all the definitions and also lambda. And in that case, based on that particular specific example of numerical, this relationship can be one of these three, that is definitive. Okay. But what is an issue is that when we are trying to characterize the equilibrium, we have to allow other kind of examples where the relationship may not be only one type. So if I change the numerical to another one, there can be this case 2 being relevant. If I change the numerical to another one, then maybe case 3 is relevant. So depending on which condition is satisfied, we are having three different possibilities of these critical values that has relationship with the demand and cost and the competition, and that will give us one of the possibilities being arise. Okay, so with respect to a specific example, you will never get all these three cases possible because of this uniqueness that either lambda will be to the left of Hx, Hy, or lambda will be to the right or in the middle. Okay, it cannot be like lambda is in the middle as well as on the left. Huh? That's not possible with respect to a particular numerical example. And we are trying to characterize for all three possibilities because that will characterize all possible demand and okay. So first we will be considering this possibility. So Hx and Hy are to the right of lambda. So if you draw a 0, 1 space, now that would be helpful. You should you should be drawing it on your rough page. So now mark a point called lambda, and then to the right of that Hx and to the right of that Hy. Okay. Now you easily know that any choice of alpha to the left of Hx will yield you totally negative payoff after acceptance. Okay. And lambda is a feasible option that I can give. And I have already showed you that if I give lambda as a pooling offer and decides to have a P which is 0, and that will be accepted by both. So the first case is very easy to consider that in this particular possibility, the foreign firm will simply offer that I will buy out 1 minus lambda amount of shares and you will hold lambda shares at the end of the day. And then after the realization of the state, the high type will get lambda x, low type will get lambda y, and for the foreign firm, it will get x minus lambda x if it is high state, y minus lambda y if it is low state, and the expectation of that will be the foreign firm's payoff. Okay, so by giving this lambda, the foreign firm is able to get the maximum and extract the maximum without losing anything by paying the reservation payoff to the host firm. Okay, so this is your proposition 3. Okay, so that's very easy. So is it clear? Do you have any question right now?
Sir, I wanted to ask that if the foreign firm holds the majority share in the host firm, then doesn't it essentially control it?
Sorry? Control issue. Control issue is not highlighted in this particular paper. Okay. So if you are interested, you look into my JEVO paper, 2008. There I have explicitly incorporated control issue and control issue switches depending on who holds the majority share and all. Okay. Okay. That particularly that doesn't prevent the foreign firm not to enter, because no entry part is a different commitment issue and different incompleteness in the contract. So if I even hold 51% of a stake, but still you are holding 49%, right? So if you are holding 49%, then if I create another entity, then there will be competition, but then even after that competition, what would be my total payoff? My total payoff will be one whole duopoly payoff plus 51% of duopoly payoff. Okay, so I have to check those dimensions. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now the which critical zone it will belong, and there will be other kind of critical zone that will come up depending on the control issue and the other managerial issues. Some of them are addressed in the original published article. Here, for the purpose of this class presentation, I am not doing that. Okay, I am just completely ignoring the control issue part. I am simply thinking in terms of a shared distribution and adverse selection problem. Okay. So that's how it is done. And also implicitly, I have assumed that all the firms which are in the market, they are independently managed by manager. Okay, so essentially shareholders, they get their share value, share profit at the end of the day. Okay, but they do not do anything. So you can again further introduce other control issues, like if I'm the majority stakeholder, I will put the output of the joint firm 0, right? So that would be the maximization. But those kind of issues I am not addressing, right? Because if I control both the firms, my own entity and my 51% of another, so then tomorrow I can simply choose 0 output for the jointly held firm. Okay, so that will then give me monopoly. So that issue I am also ignoring. So it is as if it is professionally managed firm. Managers are independently choosing their output whenever there is another entity, even if the shareholders are the same. So I'm not considering cross shareholding issues. There are plenty of IO papers on the cross shareholding issues, that how the cross shareholding actually facilitate different sorts of collusion in terms of maximization. So imagine that I own 100% of a company and 51% of another company. So given that there is a joint interest, maybe the manager will take into account, because in Kuno competition, managers are essentially choosing to maximize their own output. But now they can simply take their 100% of the duopoly profit of one and 51% duopoly of other, and then choose their Q1 where they have control 51% means you should put it 0, that's optimal. But imagine I hold only minority stake, but that minority stake is 49%. Okay, but even there also, if the managers of the 100% held company is actually managed by the shareholder themselves, they will think that, okay, I should not choose too much of output because it will hurt my the other stake that is there in the other firm. Okay, so those kind of things essentially facilitate some kind of collusive behavior. So the aggressive competition that we face in terms of quantity choices, by assuming that they are independently run firm, will not hold and things will change. So essentially all the profit expressions and other expressions will change. You will run into more complex algebra, but nothing will change. In terms of the basic spirit of the thing, things will happen in the similar vein. Okay, so is it clear? So if you're interested, you read that paper to get some more insights into this issue.
Yes, sir.
So now this first case is very simple, because lambda is less than this, so I can simply offer you to hold lambda for yourself and 1 is lambda for me, and I ask that I will not give you any price for it. You are happy because you are getting lambda x and lambda y and everything is done. But the problem arises if lambda is on the either in between or to the right. So we're just stopping here. Please read through the notes very carefully. The idea is interesting, but the algebra might require some clarification at different points. So if you just read it very carefully, you will be able to understand everything. Okay, so read it through, and tomorrow we are again meeting. And in that case, I will expect that at least you give one reading to until the end of this. Not end, tomorrow we'll be able to until the end of this particular topic, that is adverse selection. The other thing I will start, and then that is the other information problem where we have cost uncertainty. Okay, so now we are dealing with demand uncertainty. So please read until the demand uncertainty section end, and then we'll be able to finish it tomorrow. Okay. Anything else? Any questions or? Do you have any question?
No, sir.
No, sir.